we still think that it would be nice to have some questions, and we do have a bit of time. So please identify yourself.
Daniel Grant, Germany. I've seen that, if I understand your slides correctly, that you have just a small percentage of prescription errors that have been reported. We have learned in the previous talks that these are the main reasons for types of medication errors. Do you think that you require or you exclude anonymous reporting? Maybe the reason why we have so small numbers of reported prescription errors?
Just a quick observation maybe on behalf of the colleagues that have done the analysis. I think it's multifactorial. It's possibly because of a lack of a definition. It's because we've had, at a European and international level, very limited guidance on coding. And one of the observations I was making during that presentation was that some of that reporting may well be actually off-label use rather than things that would fall within the definitions that we heard earlier of actual medication errors. But of course, without that guidance and without a harmonized definition, people are using the terms differently. And I think that's what it reflects more than actually prescribing errors being less prevalent in the reports than, for example, dispensing problems. I don't know, Sabine, if you would agree with that.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. And for instance, if you look at the meta points to consider document that was referred to previously, you will see that, as Peter has mentioned, we have not yet agreed on a formal definition for medication errors. And again, if you look at the activities at a more international level, the definition of medication error, for instance, in the US and in Japan, varies quite substantially. So I think this is something that we need to take into account, and where we, for instance, also see that, for instance, we have much more medication errors reported from outside the EU than within the EU.
Just a quick observation. You said speak the common language and also harmonization. And coming from the patient safety angle, medication errors are just 10% of the incidents that a healthcare provider would receive. And so it's really important that we don't go sailing off in a different direction just for medication errors, that if you are in a hospital, you'll have a risk manager, you'll have a risk department who has to give regular reports to chief executives as to what are the risks in healthcare, infection control, devices, medicines. And therefore, you have to have a harmonized terminology, which WHO has developed, which helps characterize what is going on in healthcare delivery. And so tomorrow, we can take up this discussion, but it's absolutely essential that medication harmonizes with the rest of patient safety and the other risks that are in healthcare, and we use terminology that can be transferred. And so when there's decisions as to where to put investment, as to how to improve healthcare delivery, you have to compare, am I going to put some investment in infection control or device management, etc. And so this isn't just about medicines. We have to see this in a slightly broader context, and we have to harmonize outside of medicines, as well as, link with the previous work that you've done with MEDRA and the HUART system as well.
I have an additional patient safety comment. In Denmark, when we started our reporting system for patient safety, we did a large study asking staff how they would, if they would report to this system. And they said they would do that if it was confident and if it was anonymous to the authorities, because they would not like to find themselves on the front of the newspapers. And I certainly agree that there is a reluctance to report if you are not guaranteed to be anonymous. That is, that you will not report to the ordinary pharmacovigilance system if you are not guaranteed anonymous state. In Denmark, we're working on this. I work with patient safety daily, and sometimes we get reports which are obvious, serious adverse drug events with new medicines. For instance, this new medicine Pradaxa. And in those instances, when I can see that a doctor has made an error, I actually take the report and I change it into my own name, and then I send it to the pharmacovigilance system, because I'm afraid that with new medicines, this information is so important to get back. But the majority of patient safety officers are not clinical pharmacologists or pharmacists, they are nurses, and they do not identify this. So we really have a problem here. Thank you.
I don't know, Carlos, would you perhaps like to answer a bit here on the anonymous reporting? Because I think that's considered quite a key aspect in exchanging information.
Please, sir. Well, you have there the choice to identify the reporters, the persons which are reporting, and so giving information on medication error or in a more broad sense an adverse event. But the alternative is to give a report in an anonymized way. Well, this second alternative is preferable because, in my view, at least, because it is a way to cut the possibility to go to the reporter and so to ask for further information when there is a harm, and these could have legal consequences. So we have speaking about some hypotheses, but this chain of hypotheses could derive to us, to the reporter. So with this, the system tried to cut this possibility to come back to the reporter. But there is other side that I was explaining along my presentation. That is the staff that is receiving the reports and have to make the root analysis, cause analysis. And so they also should be protected because they receive anonymized information. But while they are collecting so many information sometimes, so many information in relation with the same case, that at the end they know exactly what are the professionals that have been involved in a case that could be that could have legal consequences. So I think that the system should also preview or to arrange legal systems in the case, or if necessary, also legal rules to isolate all this stuff from any way to go to, for instance, to the cars to inform when they are called for this by policemen or by the judges, or to go as, well, in this case, for me, it's more relatively as a witness. So they need more than professionals that are reporting. This other staff that is analyzing the root causes analysis, making this, they need for more protection, legal protection, so to avoid this. They have to go to the courts.
Can I just make a little recommendation? That's not. Can I make a little recommendation? Because I think the idea of anonymity and a separate and distinct concept of confidentiality, and you have medication or patient safety reporting systems in some, but not all member states, which have been built on anonymity in some circumstances, and you have pharmacovigilance systems which have been built on confidentiality, but not anonymity on the other hand. And I think one of the recommendations that we might come out with, particularly if we're going to have a certain amount of convergence and more than a certain amount, a lot of data exchange between systems in the future, that's our goal, that we need to provide clarity on when is anonymity needed, when, as David was just suggesting to me, we might want institutions to be identified rather than individual doctors or pharmacists or patients as another alternative. And I think that could be one of the recommendations that comes out, because when you have clarity and people understand the system within which they're reporting, that gives people confidence and the trust that Kasia was talking about to do the reporting.
Just, I would like to add something. Sorry. So I think that confidentiality is also very important, an important part of the system, but and it is not incompatible with the anonymized system. But sometimes confidentiality is not enough to protect, as I was saying before. And so in these cases that, for instance, when the legal authorities ask for more information, if they know that some information about a legal case has been collected, at this office. So, in my view, the only way to prevent and to protect the system is to protect the staff by the way of anonymization, and on the way, if necessary, with specific legal rules that specifically states that this staff that receive, collect this reporting information have no duty with third parties. So I think should be better. Thank you very much.
Okay, yes, please.
Hi, I'm Kati Ivanitsky from the Finnish Medicines Agency. You had this example of coding of cases with no adverse event. However, in pharmacovigilance, such cases do not fulfill the criteria for reporting and would not be entered in the system. So were you referring to the cases received directly from the marketing authorized holders and other reporting systems, and not the competent authorities?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So for pharmaceutical companies, it's important that they fulfill the reporting obligations where they have an adverse reaction together with a medication error, but they have also an obligation to capture in their pharmacovigilance system information that they receive in relation to medication errors, even if there is no adverse reaction. And this information should then be, for instance, discussed as part of the periodic safety update report. And therefore, it's important for them to have also guidance on how to code this information, so medication errors where there is no adverse event, and how they should manage that in their pharmacovigilance system.
In the interest of time, Kash and Sabine, should we just take one last question? A colleague over here has been very patient, and sorry to keep you waiting. We'll take one last question, then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. I'm Ute Höfner, a UQPPV from Novartis OTC, and I do have a question for the non-adverse medication error cases as well. In case it's a well-established product, you don't need a PSUR any longer. You wouldn't get those information at all because there's no single reporting requirement, no PSUR, it's gone. It falls in a gap. That's part one of my question. Unless that's a name confusion, then you want to have it, if it comes up to the worst at least 3 times, you want to have it once to the mailbox for the naming working group. If it's a serious case, you want it as an individual case report, and you want it in a PSUR. Is that correct?
Maybe address that here. So you're absolutely right. No periodic safety update reports for generic products. No routine periodic safety update reports for generic products, well-established products.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that, and the level of medication error reporting, my understanding, and ADR reporting generally for those kind of products tends to be relatively low unless the generic becomes the brand leader because the innovative product has gone off the market. And that's a particular circumstance when they may have to do that periodic reporting. But I think what I would emphasize is that the companies still have the obligation to monitor the safety of the products. And if they are getting reports of medication errors, particularly medication errors resulting in harm, then they should be, and there's a legal obligation to inform the authorities as an issue rather than of the individual reports. And the final point, your point on the name review group, I think as Thomas highlighted in his presentation, that guideline was last reviewed in 2007. Clearly, we've had a change in the legal framework. And I think one of the things that I noted on my bit of paper is that we should at least raise the question as to whether it's time to review whether that guideline is still current.
Yeah, because then the question comes up with cross-referring in order to identify the duplicates here, and specifically in light of umbrella branding for OTC products, it would be quite interesting.
Point is well taken. Colleagues, thank you to Sabine and to Kasia for chairing the second session. If we don't let you go soon, then you won't come back tomorrow. And some of you may have booked tables in 5-star Michelin restaurants, and we wouldn't want you to miss that. But just to sum up, we have had a very interesting afternoon. We've had a keynote presentation from David Cousins on the burden to healthcare and to society of medication errors. We've then had a very interesting session on medication errors in the product life cycle and in special populations. And then we've moved over to reporting, focusing on local and national reporting, and then in the latter stages, reporting at a European level. And because it's good for the soul, we've ended up with good coding practice, which I really do think is a good way to start your appetites for your evening meal. Tomorrow we're going to start at 9 o'clock prompt. We have been scribbling away madly during the presentations, and we're going to try and synthesize some of the key themes, some of the recommendations, so that we can conclude with something positive coming out. And the more presentations I hear, the more I think that there's a wealth of opportunity to do better in the future. So come back tomorrow and help us shape those recommendations. Thanks very much indeed. Have a good evening.